Your career has spanned almost 3 decades, and yet your style has remained intact and constant.
That's because, I'm a man, spell man, M-A-N.
Eddie Murphy was one of the brightest comedy stars in Hollywood, but things have changed after numerous scandals around his controversial jokes and chaotic personal life. Murphy was involved in the incident with a transgender prostitute, became a father of 10 kids from 5 women, starred in a bunch of flop movies, and then disappeared? Well, not exactly, but we didn't hear much from the comedian until 2019, when he starred in the Netflix biopic Dolomite Is My Name, and hosted Saturday Night Live for the first time in 35 years.
This is the first episode since I left back in 1984.
What can we expect from the 58-year-old Murphy, who finally returned from hibernation and claims that he's a completely different person now?
Is it a comeback?
I guess, they like to say comeback. I don't know. Let's make it easier. Yes, it's my comeback.
Before you figure it out, subscribe to the Rumour Juice YouTube channel for exciting celebrity stories. We won't justify Eddie Murphy by saying that the reason for his controversial behavior was hidden in the unpleasant childhood. But we can't deny it either. Murphy was raised by single mom Lillian in Brooklyn, New York.
I grew up in an all-black neighborhood. I did. Did you grow up in an all-black neighborhood?
When she became too ill to look after Eddie and his brother, she put the kids into foster care, where they stayed for 1 year. The comedian's father, Charles, was a policeman. He split from Lillian when Murphy was only 3 years old and died 5 years later. Murphy's older brother, Charlie, stepped up to serve as Eddie's protector whenever he could. Eddie was understandably traumatized by the loss of his father, but Charlie did his best to be his brother's rock. The youngest Murphy decided to overcome the tragedy of his father's death through laughter.
I gotta go like this.
Besides, Charles Murphy used to be an amateur comic and actor himself, which could have been the reason for Eddie's career choice. During his time at high school, Murphy regularly tried out stand-up routines on the fellow students, who loved his impromptu performances.
Because I'm standing there bleeding, my lips are swollen, people walking by going, hey, Jimmy Walker. I'm going, no, I'm Ed, I just had a fight.
Despite the tough childhood, Eddie credits the hard times with developing his razor-sharp and wicked sense of humor. Sometimes too wicked, huh?
When I say go, everybody whip out the go.
By the age of 16, Eddie was doing stand-up at local clubs.
When I was 15, 16, I was working bars, and I didn't look at it as being fearless. I just wanted to get up there and be funny.
And 3 years later, he got his first big break on Saturday Night Live. It would be fair to claim that he reinvented the show and single-handedly saved it from cancellation. In 1983, Murphy performed his Delirious show that became hugely popular and influential, despite widespread accusations of homophobia. However controversial it was, the scandals around the comedian's personal life appear to be much louder than the ones caused by his intolerant jokes. Murphy's first son Eric was born circa 1989 with the actor's then-girlfriend Paulette McNeely, and his second son Christian was born a few months later with the actor's other girlfriend Tamara Hood. Then he started dating Nicole Mitchell, who eventually became his wife. They have 5 kids together.
I mean, you have the most kids. The other ones have 1 or 2 and like that.
Yeah, I know.
You're the original.
I know.
Perhaps the biggest scandal to shake up Murphy's public persona occurred in 1997, when the police pulled him over at a notorious cruising spot in Los Angeles with a transgender prostitute. Murphy insisted he was just giving her a lift, but the prostitute claimed the comedian wanted to see her in her lingerie. Murphy threatened with a lawsuit, but later dropped it, shortly before the prostitute was found dead on the pavement outside her apartment. It is thought she was locked out and fell 5 floors to her death while trying to climb in. The comedian never commented on it. Meanwhile, his private life was in turmoil again. He divorced Nicole and began dating Spice Girl Mel B. She claimed they were in love, planning to marry, and had each other's signatures tattooed on their thighs.
You still love him?
Yeah, I always will.
However, when she became pregnant, Murphy, at this time father to 7 kids by 3 women, publicly questioned the child's paternity. Here's what he told a Dutch reporter in one of the interviews. "I don't know whose child that is until it comes out and has a blood test." Eventually, Murphy was confirmed as the child's father. By then, he was already engaged, not to Mel B though, but to a film producer, Tracy Edmonds. They held a ceremony on New Year's Day on a private island near Bora Bora, and split 14 days later without making the marriage legally binding. In 2012, Eddie started dating model Paige Butcher and has settled into family life with their 2 young children. In December 2018, the internet was hit by the photo of Murphy with all 10 of his kids. A year later, Eddie claimed that they all promised to come to the studio and see him hosting Saturday Night Live.
Your kids, I mean, do they see you as dad or do they see you as Eddie Murphy?
They see me as dad. They see me as dad.
The comedian's daughter Bria posted the photo from the show in her Instagram account and left a very nice comment to it. "My dad is such a king. Last night was epic. So proud." However, we doubt that Murphy has always been on King's pedestal, and it's not about his fatherly qualities. What we mean is the actor's numerous professional flops. In the early 2000s, Eddie Murphy landed some box office classics, with Nutty Professor 2 and his famous voiceover role in Shrek.
All right, I get it. I'm just so darn bold.
But then the actor was featured in The Adventures of Pluto Nash, Imagine That, Meet Dave, Tower Heist, 1,000 Words, and Mr. Church, which were recognized as unsuccessful by the public and critics. In 2011, Forbes described Murphy as the second most overpaid star in Hollywood, who was in desperate need for some career rehab. He once reasoned that crashes and burns are just a part of the process, but at some point many believe Murphy's career will never be recovered. Some film critics suggested that after Murphy got comfortable as a top-notch actor in Hollywood, the industry watered him down.
Then it started feeling more like work.
Well, because the money gets bigger and the fun gets smaller. That's the problem.
Others believe that the comedian's brand of humor simply stopped fitting, and it was the real reason why Hollywood stopped casting the comedian. On the other hand, it could have also been Murphy's decision to give up casting. Here's what he said in Tell-All Rolling Stone interview back in 2011. "After all these years, I've done well and I'm cool. I feel comfortable in my skin. I've saved some paper, everybody's healthy, my kids are beautiful and smart, doing different things. It's all good. I'm trying to maintain my shit like this and do a fun project every now and then." For some people, it's surprising that Eddie Murphy has slowed down his acting career, but those who have been following him closely know that he had a retirement plan as an actor. During the Today Show in 2008, Murphy said he was going to make movies until he was 50 and then go back on stage. Well, that might be why he went into hibernation right after he turned 50. Or maybe he was just tired of making terrible movies. While opening up about the possibility of making Beverly Hills Cop 4 on the Ellen DeGeneres Show in 2013,
because I don't want to do anything else that sucks.
Murphy admitted he's no longer just accepting any scripts thrown at him. Unexpectedly enough, the Beverly Hills Cop franchise was recently picked up by Netflix. Moreover, it seems like Netflix's producers decided to fuel every step of the comedian's return to the business. Over the years, Murphy has teased fans with talk of a big comeback, but this time he meant it.
And one of the things that we're all excited about is this idea that you are planning to return to stand-up comedy.
Yes.
And like any good comeback, it needed to be prefaced by a major publication. In Murphy's case, it was an interview for the New York Times. Here's Eddie's comment on Dolomite Is My Name. "I didn't want to just pop back up. I wanted a funny movie to remind them that they liked me. This movie turned out so strong that I figured this is a great way to come back." However, Dolomite Is My Name was more than just a funny movie for Eddie. He dedicated it to his older brother Charlie, who was also an actor and comedian. Charlie Murphy died in 2017 after a battle with leukemia. TMZ reported that the comic had been undergoing chemotherapy treatment, and his family had thought Charlie had been getting better. Charlie's death must have been another turning point in Eddie's life. One of the most interesting and candid moments of the New York Times interview is one where Murphy reflected on his 2 legendary comedy specials, Delirious and Raw, and looked back on some of his jokes.
So if you don't know where the section is, you got to keep moving. So if they do see it, it's quick and you switch it.
The Brooklyn-born funny man said rewatching Raw made him cringe.
When you watch that stuff, do you laugh? Is it still funny to you?
Some of it, I cringe when I watch it. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that.
He said afterwards that the old stand-up set, full of homophobic jokes and bits on sexually transmitted infections, divorce, and defecation was a bit much.
Stop. Now see, I did jokes about I did jokes about homosexuals about a couple years ago, and were mad. They were like, it's nothing like having a nation of looking for you.
He said that cocky statements about women and relationships reminded him of breakups he was going through back then. Then came one of the biggest revelations. "I was a young guy processing a broken heart, kind of an asshole." Murphy apologized for all the controversial materials and promised to be mushier after his return to the industry. It doesn't seem like Murphy tried to excuse his past decisions. It was rather a hopeful promise for the future ones.
And I'm looking at it within the context of the times, I'm going, okay, I'm a kid saying that.
No regrets.
None whatsoever. Nah.
The comedian's recent statements are supported by his philanthropic endeavors. With a net worth of $160 million, he has donated to a number of foundations, including the AIDS Foundation, Charities for Homelessness, Creative Arts, and cancer patients. He also donated to the Martin Luther King Jr. Center and to the Screen Actors Guild. It sounds like Eddie Murphy has changed a lot, and so has his perspective on his career. Maybe he will never recover the status of Hollywood's sure thing, but does he need it after all?
I'm never going to be on it like I was when I was in my 20s, because what I like to do more than anything is just to not have a schedule and just be within earshot of my children and just do nothing. That's my favorite dish.
Besides, thanks to his signed deal with Netflix, Eddie has a theater tour lined up, which means he could be in clubs working out jokes very soon. Just like in the good old 80s, huh? Considering stand-up comedy was one of his first loves, it seems only right for Murphy's career to come full circle, to where everything started. Yeah, this might be the second coming of Eddie Murphy. In 2011, he promised Rolling Stone to have a really great show, should he ever get back on stage. While the hardest thing for comics nowadays is to find their voice, the hardest thing for Murphy is to prove that he didn't lose his, and evolved a lot, both as a comedian and as a human being. And let's hope for his great new shows.